Welcome into another episode of Tailgate Talk SEC. I am Will Thomas. Week 7 recap. We have a lot to discuss in this episode. We have a whole lot to discuss, a lot of implications coming out of this week. This, I do think, could be one of the more consequential weeks, not just in the SEC, but really in the entire sport. I'm not going to discuss James Franklin and Penn State. I just figured I'd say their names right now so you know where I'm at with that situation. But this was a pretty electric week of college football for a lot of reasons. Let's just get right into this. We'll start off with Washington State at Ole Miss. Now, I had pinned this as a trap spot. Washington State plus the 31.5 was one of my best bets. I've never felt better about having 30 points in my back pocket than watching this game. 24-21 Ole Miss. And I mean, Ole Miss was fine offensively. Right, they were 7 of 15 on third downs. They had 439 total yards of offense, 8.7 yards per pass, 4.5 yards per rush. They had 8 penalties for 99 yards. Those can absolutely kill your drives, when you have a holding in a big spot, when you have an illegal shift on like a third and short. And they had one fumble in plus territory from Trinidad Chambliss. You're just used to so much more production also that when you only see 24 points for Ole Miss, your mind immediately goes like, what went wrong? Like, it was honestly, it was fine. Their numbers were okay. It's just Ole Miss, so you're used to more than what you got yesterday. Kawan Lacey was great, though, for the Rebels. 24 carries for 142 yards. The defense only gave 21 points, but they were a little more leaky than you would like. Washington State threw for 218 yards and 2 scores through the air, 4.5 yards per carry for the Cougars. I mean, this is clearly a look ahead, right? I'm willing to concede that as a look ahead. I picked Washington State to cover. That's fine. I'm still not sold on Ole Miss as a true contender even before this game, right? They could have won this game by 30, and I still would have been like, I've got to see you play at Georgia, right? Before I really give a ton of respect to an Ole Miss team that is ranked in the top 5, but I need to see it from Kiffin's guys before I really buy into it. All right, we're going to go chronologically by window here. What was the other noon game? I think it was just Alabama and Missouri. That's right, it was Ole Miss. But Alabama at Missouri, 27-24 Bama. Bama showed me a lot in this one. I had picked Missouri to win. I thought they were going to get up for this, but their performance did not scale to the quality of opponent they had to play. Bama was by far the best team they've played, and Bama took care of business. Ty Simpson is just ice cold. I mean, that throw he made on fourth down that led to Bama's final touchdown to put it away, unbelievable, just ripper. In that context, in that situation, they're able to limit Ahmad Hardy pretty well. He only carried the ball 12 times for 52 yards. And they picked off Prebula twice. He was very uncomfortable because of Bama's defense. We hadn't seen him look that, confused, that shaken, that rushed all year. And he was at home. So that's just a massive credit to Bama's defense. Not like you can just say an environment got to Prebula. Bama's defense got to Prebula in his home building. It was big. Missouri's edge rushers, though, they did what I thought they would. There were 4 sacks total, 3 from Zion Young and Damon Wilson, which included a strip sack. It just didn't matter enough because Bama's defense was able to seriously stifle Missouri's offense. And now Missouri has to go on the road to Auburn for their bounce back. And we'll talk about Auburn in a little bit. We'll see how that game really, what that game really looks like. We'll get to that in a bit. But Bama gets to host a porous Tennessee defense. We'll talk about Tennessee later on too, but now Bama gets to go back home, get Tennessee. Bama looks really good. They look really good, and with the matchups they have left on their schedule, they're going to win a lot of football games and just keep stacking wins in conference. I think you're going to see Bama and Atlanta and probably in the college football playoff. For Missouri, right, this game at Auburn next week is going to be a big-time test of the character of your team. Can you lose this game at home in a massive spot where you really feel like you could arrive right on the national scene with this one and drop that game, but then go on the road to another talented team and get a win? Like, this is a big-time character test for Missouri next week for me. So we'll see how that goes. We'll preview that later on in the week. Red River time. Oklahoma versus Texas, 23-6 Longhorns. Desperation's a funny thing. It's a really funny thing, and Texas came out desperate. That defense played awesome. They held Oklahoma to 1.6 yards per carry. They picked off John Mateer 3 times. And Oklahoma's front only had 1 sack. I credit Arch for that because Oklahoma's front was getting pressure and penetration all game. They had 12 TFLs. Like, they were flying through the blockers and getting Texas ball carriers behind the line of scrimmage all day long. Arch just wouldn't get taken down. He was moving. He was mobile. He was getting rid of the ball off balance. He took care of the ball. It was really impressive from Arch in this game in a must-have spot for Texas. And Mateer, I thought he was healthy enough So the injury is not at all an excuse for Oklahoma's only scoring 6 points. I think Texas's defense just played awesome. I mean, Oklahoma, this rushing attack, man, I brought it up, 1.6 yards per carry. Their leading rusher, Torrey Blaylock, only had 33 yards. You're just not going to win games consistently against the top of the SEC if you can't run the ball at all. You just can't. So Oklahoma really does need to find that if they're going to try and continue to be a top 10 team, right? A playoff contending team like I thought they could be and like they think they can be. There was that missed block in the back call on the punt return. That did not decide the game. It didn't, because you could take 7 points off the board, take the momentum off the board. Oklahoma is just, they're not scoring. They just didn't score. So the missed block in the back on the punt return does not really make a difference. The flags were pretty even. Time of possession was very close. Just totally dominant by Texas's defense in this game. I had picked Oklahoma. I thought they were going to be able to score enough. I had Texas scoring a little less than 23. That punt return really killed that cap. But Oklahoma, man, they just could not move the ball on this Texas defense. And it was an incredible performance by the Longhorns. A great job by Sark to get his guys rallied up. And now for Texas, they have to go to Lexington next week. That is going to be an absolute snooze fest of a game. So don't fall into the trap. Because Kentucky sucks. Kentucky is absolutely terrible. But they'll be coming off a bye. You're coming off a Red River. They need to stay desperate. Texas needs to stay desperate because they still have those 2 losses. If you slip up in Kentucky, I mean, it's absolutely over for a lot of reasons. So they need to stay desperate, stay focused. Oklahoma also has to go on the road. They go to South Carolina. This game I thought was going to be massive preseason because I thought Oklahoma would be this good. I thought Carolina would be much better. This is still a pretty big game because now Carolina is in desperation mode. And Oklahoma, they have to go on the road after their first loss of the year. How do they react? How do they bounce back? So we'll see how that goes. But those should both be pretty good games next week. Let's get into Arkansas at Tennessee now. This was 34-31 Vols. Arkansas won just about every element in the stat sheet. They won the first down battle. They were better on third downs. Total yards, passing yards, only had 1 flag for Tennessee's 10 flags, had a higher time of possession, 3-0 turnovers in favor of Tennessee. Tennessee forced 3 fumbles, and they picked them all up. That just absolutely kills you in any situation. It especially kills you on the road. I thought this was just 2 bad defenses playing each other. One of them was just able to punch the ball out. Because, Arkansas ran for 241. Tennessee ran for 273. It was 256 to 221 through the air. These offenses were absolutely moving the ball up and down the field. Tennessee had 5 sacks. Arkansas had 0. So the Vols really won the game changers, in my opinion, which was turnovers and sacks that can either stifle drives or just, a turnover gets you the ball. Tennessee dominated those. And despite that, it's not a performance defensively that you really wanted heading into Tuscaloosa. Now, a look-ahead spot could be in play here, but you expect look-aheads to really affect offenses as opposed to defenses. Tennessee's defense is still beat up. You have to give them credit for that. But this defense is not playing the way that Tennessee fans wish it would. And you cannot rely on multiple fumbles week in and week out, especially on the road next week, to consistently win games for you. So Arkansas, they host Texas A&M. That could be their biggest win of the year. Aggies just keep kind of cruising along. We'll get to their game against Florida here in a second. But they might be due to drop one because of how wide open this league is and what we've seen every team do in terms of, no one's invincible at all. So we'll see how that goes. Tennessee at Alabama. I don't know how close that game's going to be, honestly, because of Tennessee's defense. We'll see how that goes. We'll preview that later in the week. But a win for Tennessee at home. I had the over in this game as part of my best bets, just 1 possession short. But this is a very entertaining game. Tennessee looked like they were pulling away with it. Arkansas made it interesting at the end. It was a fun game to watch. Not as fun as one of these night games, which we'll get to in a second. But let me get to a boring one first. Florida at Texas A&M, 34-17 Aggies. My worries about the Aggies' explosives against this Florida defense were realized very quickly. The Aggies' first play from scrimmage was a 67-yard pass to Mario Craver, and then Marcel Reed ran it in for the Aggies on the next play. Florida's scripted drive to open the game. They got the ball first, marched down, up 7-0. It looked really good. Then they had practically nothing else the rest of the game, which is the ultimate indicator of just bad play calling and a bad offensive scheme and an offense that gets quickly picked up on by the defense and then doesn't make an adjustment to beat the defense. They were 1 of 10 on third down. Florida's third down woes continue. Texas A&M the past 3 weeks, let me pull this up real quick, actually, because I screenshotted this stat. On third down defensively, in SEC play, they've only allowed 2 of 33 third downs on their defense. Florida was 1 of 10, Mississippi State was 1 of 10, and Auburn was 0 of 13. That is psychotic. 2 of 33 on third downs over 3 games on this A&M defense is ridiculous. Elko has this defense playing absolutely awesome football. Jaden Ball for Florida, he only ran it for 3.6 yards per carry. He was relatively contained by Texas A&M. And Florida's defensive front, zero sacks, and 0 TFLs. They did not generate a single negative play. Like, where is the production for this Florida defensive front? Because there's a lot of good guys on that front, that we thought, at least. Right, and A&M's offensive line, they have a great group of blockers. That O-line is very slept on nationally. But to not even get one TFL, like you can't get in the backfield one time and make a play, it's concerning. Everything about Florida is concerning. Everything about him is. And despite all of what I've been saying, this game was a one-score game until the last 5 minutes. Still. Like, Florida they're in all these games. They just lack the competence to get it done and really make the big play to try and win again like this on the road. You would think that I would have to make an emergency video in the next 48 hours or so about Florida's head coaching position, but we'll see how that goes. Next week, the Gators host Mississippi State. Does Napier coach that game? What does the crowd look like? We'll see how that goes. And the Aggies go to Fayetteville. Heads up. Because this Arkansas team, they look really explosive. It'll be Petrino's first home game as the interim. That's a tricky one. That is a really, really tricky one. South Carolina at LSU. This game was boring as hell. I mean, 2010 LSU. I am totally out on LSU. This team is bad. This team is not good at all. The offense is just brutal. They ran the ball a little better than usual, but I mean, they turned the ball over twice inside the 1. Caden Durham fumbled at the goal line. Nussmeier threw a pick at the goal line. And Nuss fumbled another one late at the 1 that he just was able to fall on and just kind of snuck under his rib and he recovered it. LSU almost turned the ball over 3 times, a combined half yard from the end zone. Why can't they score? This is LSU, man. You got Garrett Nussmeier at quarterback, all these great wideouts, a great pair of young running backs. Score the ball. They just can't score the ball. I mean, LSU's defense, it was still good. They had 5 sacks. They held Sellers to 124 yards passing. They allowed 4.3 yards per rush, which is a decent number, but it's good against the South Carolina team, who has a lot of dynamic rushers in their offense. 13-5 penalties in favor of LSU. You can credit the environment for that, but it wasn't even that great in this game. I think that just kind of speaks to how good Death Valley is when it's at its peak, because the environment was not what you're used to seeing from LSU in a night home games, and they still got 13 flags on South Carolina. Here's the first problem with the officiating that I had last night. South Carolina had a fake punt. It was in the second half. I think it was a one-score game at this point, and like they're actively they're converting it. If you saw this play, you know that the punter hit the guy coming across. He was going to get that first down. The officials blew it dead and called a procedure penalty on the punter for, running the play allegedly when the referee was in the way. But if you go back and look at the tape, the referee had backed up. And the punter looks, he's ready to go, and then they snap the ball. Beamer was livid on the sideline. And I agree with him. The official got out of the way. It seemed like that play should have been allowed to run. And South Carolina got backed up 5 yards and had to punt the ball away. But as we all know, that is not the worst officiating thing that we saw yesterday, and it's not the worst thing that I will talk about. But looking forward, LSU has to go to Nashville now. They got to come to my city and play the Vanderbilt Commodores. That game should be close. Vandy coming off a bye after their loss to Bama. LSU, who just looks so slow and dead, has to go on the road now. We'll see how that goes. And Carolina hosts Oklahoma. Carolina needs a big win. They do, and Oklahoma will still be ranked when that happens, even though they lost to Texas. That could be a big spot for Beamer and the Gamecocks to get a signature win this year, while Oklahoma has to bounce back. That game should be very, very good on Saturday. Georgia at Auburn. 20-10 Georgia. Just real quick, we're going to go through the game stats, and then I'll get through all the other intangibles. I mean, Auburn played very well on defense. They held Georgia to 2.7 yards per carry and 5.7 yards per pass. That yards per rush stat for Georgia. I don't think they're going to be anywhere close to that for the rest of the year. Auburn's defense played awesome in this game, and they didn't allow a third down conversion until the fourth quarter, where Georgia then rattled off 5 straight. So it's a lot of credit to the Dogs for clutch time performing there on those third downs, but Auburn held Georgia without a third down conversion through 45-plus minutes of that game, which is just very impressive. The passing game still was not there for Auburn. Arnold's legs looked good, and the run game was good with Jeremiah Cobb. They had 2 sacks and 6 TFLs, which beat Georgia in both those categories. The end of the first half, I think, just broke Auburn, emotionally, because you went from 17-0 to 10-3, just a total shock to the system where they couldn't bounce back. And just here we go. All right, let's talk about the officiating. I think that was a touchdown by Jackson Arnold. I think it was. Obviously, the replay officials didn't, but I thought that the tip of the ball crossed the plane before it got punched out. When the conclusion was reached that it was a fumble, it should have been a touchdown for Georgia. because they're acknowledging a fumble, they're acknowledging a recovery. He was never down. When the ball is loose, you never see any official blow the play dead because the ball is loose. They want to see it play out, and then you can go back through review, see if the guy was down, see if his progress was stopped, all that. They blew it dead. So if you want to call it a fumble, it should have been a touchdown for Georgia. But the crew last night was horrible and didn't want to get anything right. And then the following Georgia drive after that fumble, so many stoppages for reviews that gave UGA free timeouts on their march down the field. It took 36 minutes from the 2-minute timeout to halftime. There were no injuries. There wasn't lightning in the area. That was just the officials dragging this on, not doing their jobs in an effective manner, taking 36 minutes to get from 2 minutes to halftime. It was horrible. And then the Kirby timeout thing. People are now looking at that video saying that Kirby burned his timeout and then he would just complain to the official about Auburn's defenders clapping, right? Trying to get them to do a false start, trying to get them to an early snap, things like that. If that was true, why did the referee react the way he did and then give them back the timeout? You can see it. Like the ref, when Kirby's talking to him, the ref like he looks like dejected. Like it looks like he thinks, I just messed up. So then he goes to the head referee and they give him back the timeout. Coaches call timeout and complain to the refs all the time. I agree with that. It never results in the officials giving the team their timeout back unless the coach convinces them of it. And people are mad at Kirby for it because it's sort of like gamesmanship, it's sort of like gaming the system. If a 4-year-old gets behind the wheel of a car and hits a telephone pole, you don't blame the 4-year-old. You blame the adult whose watch it happened on. Don't blame Kirby for gaming the officials. Blame the officials for letting it happen and not having a backbone and calling the game correctly. Coaches and players are going to do what they have to do to win. It's up to the officials to enforce it when it crosses a line. And they didn't do it because this crew sucked. This crew was horrible. And after the game, all the coaches and the players, they had to go get in front of the media and be held accountable for what they did wrong. The officials got in their cars and went home. They have to answer to nobody for what happened last night. That's the biggest problem with officiating in this sport, is that you can have all these things go wrong, but then all that happens is Greg Sankey tweets out something that says, sorry, we messed up. This crew, they need to be held accountable for last night and not call a game for the rest of the season until they figure out how to do their jobs. Because the officiating in college football, it goes beyond just the 22 guys on the field and the coaches and players on the sidelines. There are millions of dollars being gambled on these games. You're dealing with billion-dollar companies who are the sports books, the TV networks, all of that. You're dealing with things that are so much larger than the scope of the building that you're in when you're calling these games. So to mess it up as bad as these guys did yesterday is horrible. Now, I do not think that the officials cost Auburn the game. That is not what I'm saying. I think Georgia beat Auburn. That was irrelevant of the officiating. That's not what I'm saying. But just the basic principle of the officiating needing to be correct and stop being this horribly wrong to where it's a fumble, but Georgia didn't score. Oh, you didn't call timeout? Sorry, let's give it back to you. Those mistakes, like in a closer game than this, that can absolutely dictate the game. Georgia won this game outright. It would not have changed with the officiating being good. I'm not saying that. But, man, the officiating in this sport is horrible. And we saw the total epitome of it last night in this Georgia-Auburn game. Something needs to change. Something has got to change. But anyways, let's just zoom out of this here. Big win for Georgia because they needed it. It's weird to say, but Georgia's back was against the wall here because they already had a conference loss. You lose 2, you're probably not making it to Atlanta. So now they're 5-1 and 3-1 in the SEC. They host Ole Miss next week. That is a massive game because Georgia gets a chance to take down one of the top teams in the conference, prove that they still belong. I think I like Georgia in that game early, but we'll preview it more in depth as we keep moving forward. And Auburn hosts Missouri. I referenced it a bit earlier in the show. This feels like a loss that can break Auburn. Because now they're 0-3 in conference. They're out of the race for Atlanta. They're out of the race for the playoff. And the way that you've lost, now this game, the Oklahoma game, in their perceived mind had lost the Oklahoma game, that can absolutely break a team. So on Saturday, I don't know if we get an Auburn team that's inspired or an Auburn team that is there by obligation. And I think we'll know pretty early on in that game against Missouri where Auburn's at mentally and how much they're going to fight the rest of the season. But yeah, we'll see. Wild game last night on the Plains. Georgia earned that win. Georgia earned the win. But man, there are a lot of things we're talking about in the aftermath of that game. But that is all of our games to preview for Week 7. It was a hell of a week. A lot of implications coming out of this Saturday. And I just hope the next Saturday is anywhere near as good. So I've been Will Thomas. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Tailgate Talk SEC, and I will see you next time.